When you travel the world as much and for as long as I have, you repeatedly catch sight of just one topic. That's the human being. The fact is, we all believe we're truly distinct. The reality is that all 7 billion of us are all the same. I would say that there are between 500 and 1,000 distinct types of humans in the world. I'm one of them, and so are you. Clues are everywhere. The reality is that no one sees them. A clue could be as simple as a glance or a toothbrush. It could be a painting, a photograph, or how a family's shoes are arranged. Just as distinct as a drop of blood, a person's home is a true reflection of their spirit. It's not just what you see, it's how it's placed. Clue gathering is not linear. Some clues lead nowhere. Some clues are so small that even I don't notice them at first. I call these clues, these insights into people's lives, small data. I listen to what people like and what they don't like, what they need and what they really want. The pieces of the puzzle come together and create an entirely new picture. In the end, everything boils down to one simple thing: the consumer. And no matter how insignificant consumer observations may appear to be, I've learned that every single thing we do in life, consciously or unconsciously, reveals incredible insights about who we really are. I'm not a trained psychologist or a detective or a forensic investigator. I'm a compulsive collector of clues, an explorer of small data.
And now, please join me in welcoming Martin Lindstrom.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so happy I'm not there. This photo is 15 minutes old. I mean, seriously, right? But what's so fascinating, I thought about that yesterday. This story about what happened in New York City yesterday and today is also a story about human mankind. The city shut down, and something remarkable happened the last 12 hours. I won't tell you what it is. I'll come back to that in a second. But it's something you and I fundamentally believe, can learn from. There is a couple of things I wanted to say today, and I sort of thought about how serious should I be? So I thought I'm going to give you 3 guarantees today. After 1 hour, there's 3 guarantees I'll fulfill. The first thing is that I'm going to change fundamentally the way women go to public toilets. The second thing I'm going to do is the way men are going to use the remote control in the future is going to fundamentally change as well. And the third thing, and I know I don't know, it's me. I'm going down this toilet path now, but I'm actually going to change the way you will look at toilet paper forever as well. That's my promise for the next hour. Is that fair? I have a bonus, by the way. Hopefully, I'm also going to give you some inspiration to how you can strengthen your amazing bookstores out there. And I really say that from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys, because you are the foundation of a society. People have just forgotten it for a moment or two. So let me just wind back the clock a couple of seconds and ask myself, why did people forget about that? I was in North Carolina about half a year ago, sitting with my client. And we were sitting at the table next to this table. 4 beautiful people, mom and dad, and I think the two children. Very, very busy, as you can see. And we were talking for about an hour, and I didn't notice them. In fact, I think they're still sitting there right now. But the reality is that we are not present anymore. We live in a different world somehow. I'm sure some of you are familiar with an article from the New York Times in 2014. It was this restaurant owner which did this amazing study. He was video filming people for 10 years in a restaurant. And he was measuring, by watching those tapes, how long time people were spending in the restaurant eating. And to his conclusion, he was saying, well, the study basically showed that people were spending 1 hour and 5 minutes for an average meal from beginning to the end. Fantastic. But then something extraordinary happened. Over 10 years, things changed from 1 hour and 5 minutes to 1 hour and 55 minutes. People eat more. So why do they eat more? Well, as he started to analyze those tapes, he realized they did not eat more. In fact, they got more complaints. Why was that? Well, the first thing they do as they enter the restaurant, according to those video recordings, was that people would ask the waiter, where's the Wi-Fi? They couldn't find the Wi-Fi, so they would complain a little bit about that. And then, by the way, once they found the Wi-Fi, they'll complain that it was too slow. And once they've done that and they're up running, they will take the menu card, scan through it, and then they'll take photos and selfie themselves 500 times to the world. Now, as they'd done that, the waiter was waiting. They would order the food. They would check if that price was okay. And the food would arrive, but at that stage, they would be so busy taking photos of the food that it would be cold. Which is really not the issue. The issue is they will complain about it later on, which will be another 7 minutes on top of it. But the favorite part of this study is that they would even add a couple of minutes to this whole game as they were leaving, because they were so busy with this thing that they would bump into other people, and they had to spend another 2 minutes apologizing for bumping into people. This is our world. We can hate it, we can embrace it, or perhaps we can turn it around to our benefit. I asked a couple of you guys about what you thought about this.
Especially a mom with young kids, she might not have a lot of adult interaction during the day. Just a way to have some adult conversation. And maybe it's somebody who's by themselves now, and this is their one time during their day, maybe their morning, that they're going to have an actual conversation with somebody, and it doesn't always have to be about books. That interaction that we can make that grandmother feel good about their relationship with their grandchild, giving them something that we know that child is going to like and that child is going to appreciate, and hopefully keep fostering that relationship between that grandchild and the grandparent.
This is something we've been working hard at for 32 years, and we have children who grew up coming to Storytime who are bringing their grandchildren even. Children who come through the story times keep that place in their heart and continues to build for future generations.
People who are younger tend to shop in groups, tend to talk about books and with someone physically there. It's just a very collaborative shopping experience. They want to feel validated in their choices, I think.
They're more tactile, right? It's something I've noticed. They'll kind of come up and flip through things. And so this display, I think, kind of simplifies this. This is, in contrast to these kind of very ordered rows. So I think that works with that particular style of browsing.
They'll walk in the door and go in 4 different directions, and they'll silently walk around and read the staff recommendations. They're not quite as tactile with the books, but they are more likely to ask staff questions.
So what's fascinating about this thing is that the kids, as we learned, and the younger people are standing in groups around a table, and they're pitching the books to each other. And if they all come to an agreement, yes, I want to buy that, they buy the book. They want the messy stuff. They want the Instagram-ish type of pattern, where adults want the structured stuff. But there's more to this. I mean, it's funny because there was a study conducted some years ago, which we did, about the influence of the phone, the iPhone, on our behavior. And one of the conclusions I came up with was that we actually are in love with the phone. Now, it was very controversial. I used neuroscience to do it, and instead of me telling you about it, I'll ask Al Gore to tell about it, because he used that insight from my article at Steve Jobs' funeral, and here's what he said.
Some of you may have seen an article a few weeks ago by a neuroscientist who wrote in the New York Times how he had begun studies with the brain scanning machines to explore whether or not technologies like the iPhone and the iPad are addictive. And to his surprise, he found no, the parts of the brain that lit up were not those associated with addictive behavior. What happened instead was that there was a flurry of activity in the insular cortex, and he wrote, exactly in the areas that are activated by the experience of love.
I did have quite a lot of scientists running after me after that study. But what was interesting was, I'm not sure if you agree with me, we don't touch people anymore. Have you noticed that? The first thing we touch in the morning, who is that? That's our iPhone, right? Is that because that we don't touch people? Is that because we're afraid of bacteria? Is it because sexual harassment? Is it just because it's not our culture anymore? Well, your biggest asset is touch, right? Now, here's the good news. I have an app for that. I mean, if you haven't seen your husband, your wife, or your girlfriend or boyfriend for some time, what you do is you ask her or him to download this app. And it's very simple. When you scanned your thumbprint, which you both have to do in advance, then when you want to kiss each other, you put the thumbprint on this display, both, it's very important, at the same time, right? And it will vibrate, and it's a thumb kiss. The slogan, by the way, is be together while you're apart. But it also shows the virus going into our society, in my opinion. And my question, of course, to you is, as these behavioral patterns are changing, what's your role with social media? And I think there's no one greater to talk about that in particular one bookstore was mentioned this for me.
The social media space specifically, people are connecting to authors a lot, and that's where they get a lot of their kind of emotional connection with authors to bring them in the store. Your question makes me think of an author that we have who lives locally, young adult author named Sarah Dessen. When we were working up to the release of her book, we made items unique to our store, buttons, stickers that were drawn from characters and locations in her book. And so we had kind of a pre-order campaign driven by social media with the promise of, you know, getting one of these items or a whole packet of these items to pre-order the book. We had people from England, people from Australia ordering the book on the basis of that and her retweets of our social media campaign, you know. So that's the kind of thing where the reach of that is kind of unlimited, you know. That was really great to see, and it was a really successful event for us. Aziz Ansari had a book, Modern Romance, took the poster, cut his face out, basically. He has hearts over his eyes in the book cover. It's kind of immediately obvious what you're supposed to do with this, and that's the kind of thing that I want to do more of, is have things in the store that kind of provoke people or provoke a sort of reaction or emotion that will kind of motivate them to post it on social media and let people know about us, but have it be authentic.
Well done. Good work. Well done. Absolutely. Let's give them a hand, right? Yeah. So I need to take my own medicine, I guess, right now. That's the reason why we have odd people following me everywhere right now, because we are streaming this live on Periscope, which is really scary, and Facebook Live for a small group. But I want you guys to test this. I want to do an experiment with you guys, just for fun. So I want to see how fast can we spread the word, because I want to prove for you, if we do it the right way, it actually works. So I'm going to give you some details up here, hashtag Lindstrom @ABA. And if you happen to have a Twitter account, then what you should do is, over the next 40, 50, 60 minutes, is to take photos, hashtag it, and put it live. And let's look at the statistics later on and see how fast this spreads across the country, just for fun. This is not an issue about Martin promoting Martin. which you kind of are. But it's also an issue for me. I want to prove that, in fact, you can do exactly the same because you have authors coming in every day. And they actually have a lot of followers. And you need to take their followers and make them become fans of your place. So we need to embed that into our DNA. It's not easy, I know, but try to give it again. So hashtag Lindstrom at ABA, and we will give you a prize. There will be a winner, and the winner will get consultation with me. And I'll spend some time with you guys over Skype and see if I can give you some hints about what to do. Let's just flick a page. This is sad. In the last 2 years, humans have created 90% of all information ever created by our species. I would claim most of that 90% is absolutely crap. I'm not sure what you think. But this is scary stuff. I mean, seriously, if this is true, this is very bad. And the whole answer to everything in the whole world is, guess what? Big data. I've solved it. I have a big data. But is that really the answer, is my question. And the question is very interesting, and I'm sure you remember this. Do you remember in 2012, where Google came up with this amazing announcement that based on the words people were typing into Google, the keywords, they were actually able to predict a flu trend before it kicked out, 4 or 5 days before. Do you remember it? Amazing stuff. Now, it created a tidal wave in the pharmaceutical industry because now they could supply all that stuff to all these doctors across the country in advance. No one would run out. Let's just pause for a second here, because that was part one of this story. My role is I'm an observer, and I try to see things from more than one angle. In particular, not my angle, but I try to put myself in the shoes of a consumer. So I lived in more than 2,000 homes across 77 countries, and try to understand how we work. It's fascinating stuff, I have to say. In many ways, the best way to illustrate what I do is to show you a TV commercial from 1980 for a newspaper called The Guardian.
An event, seen from one point of view, gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
Isn't that fantastic? And that's in many ways what I try to do. I promised you I will talk about women's relationship to toilets, right? You remember these public toilets? We have them sort of in masses in this hotel, right? So where do most women go when they go to a public toilet? Remember, my role is to observe people everywhere, right? Do they go into the first, second, third, or fourth? What do you think? Well, it's fascinating. Most goes into the second stall. The second most popular one is the third stall. The cleanest one is the first one. Which leads to a fundamental conclusion now. I know that, and I like the men to keep an eye on that, yeah. When you walk out here, I'm sure there will be a line to the first one instead. My role, of course, is not to go into public toilet, but sometimes it is because my role is to look at the signs of buildings and malls and stores and stuff like that. But it does reveal an interesting insight about how we behave. And I've been puzzled whenever I talk to consumers and spending time in their homes, watching them, why we do odd things. I mean, I'll just ask you a question. Be honest now. How many of you, when you vacuum clean and you have that little thread on the floor and you clean up, instead of picking it up with your fingers? Raise your hand. Come on. Come on. Okay, this is deeply irrational, and it's so interesting. Why do we do it? But that's how we are as human beings. I was on a diet a couple of months ago because I fly so much on planes. I eat all this crappy catering food. And I had the experience, I'm sure she has. I was sitting there. I was on a diet. I went to the fridge. I checked it out. I concluded there's nothing in the fridge, period. 10 minutes later, what did I do? Go back to the fridge just to double check. There's nothing in the fridge. This one here. How many of you have tried that the batteries are somewhat flat on your remote control, so you press harder to squeeze that last battery out? Raise your hand. So why do we do all this stuff? And what does it tell about us as humans? Well, every minute we actually leave traces of emotional DNA behind ourselves. Clues which are telling about who we really are as people. And we're not talking about the fingerprints and the hair and the nail. We're talking about how we place things in our home, how we hang that painting, how the shoes are placed. And all that stuff reveals insight about all of us and can help us actually to design our bookstores too. Let me give you an example from a favorite brand of mine, which is Lego. You're familiar with Lego, right? Comes from the country I'm born and raised in. In 2002, Lego had a huge problem. They're very close to bankruptcy. And at that stage, they decided that they wanted to listen to big data. They wanted to find out what is the reason why Lego is struggling. Now, the conclusion from all these fancy reports was saying, you know what? The instant gratification generation has arrived. Because of that, Lego concluded kids are not going to play with Lego anymore. I mean, who would use those thousands of building blocks, spend hundreds of hours on building it if you want instant gratification? So what is the most obvious answer to this? To change the size of the Lego bricks. And that's exactly what they did. They changed the size from those tiny bricks to huge building blocks. And the numbers of bricks in a box will basically change from thousands of bricks to tens or hundreds of bricks. In 2003, the sales went down 30% during Christmas, which, by the way, is the biggest period of time during the year. 75% of all Lego sales is during Christmas. And that was the year where Lego was close to bankruptcy. As a conclusion, they sort of said, what are we doing wrong? So a little team went into a home of an 11-year-old boy in Germany. And as they were sitting around these couches and chairs and on the floor in that bedroom, they asked him one single question. What are you most proud of? And the kid thought for a moment, and then he pointed at a shelf up there. He said, that thing. And he was pointing at an old, worn-down shoe, an old sneaker. And he took it down almost like it was gold, and he said, look at this. Isn't it beautiful? And Lego was kind of puzzled. What is this all about? He said, do you know what it means? It means I'm the best skater in town. You see, when you're a skater, if you know that, you have to slide down that skateboard in a certain angle. And if you slide down exactly the right angle, it shows not only you the best, it also creates a wear and tear on that sports shoe. An angle of 12.5%, which is exactly what he had. That was his trophy. And that led to two simple conclusions for Lego. The first one is, they were wrong. The big data told them something wrong. Because it's not a matter about small and big bricks. In fact, they changed the size of the bricks to tiny bricks again. And they learned they could do that because if you put the kids into the driver's seat, they will spend thousands of hours on Lego. And as a result of that, the Lego movie later on became a reality. You guys every day are sitting on small data. But because we are so obsessed with that thing in front of our eyes, we're not present anymore. So we don't see it. It's like we become more and more blind. I mean, I love to sit in an airport and close my eyes, and then I do a game with myself. I try to guess what I'm seeing. And if you do that 100 times, you actually start to see with closed eyes. I want you to open your eyes more than anyone else, because that's your role. In fact, I want to tell you about how you can take the strength of Amazon and the other ones out there and make it become their weakness. And the best way to do that, well, is to show you a video clip from Enemy of State. You may remember this scene.
Hey, Columbia, come on. You know, in guerrilla warfare, you try to use your weaknesses as strengths.
Such as?
Well, if they're big and you're small, then you're mobile and they're slow. You're hidden and they're exposed. You only fight battles you know you can win. That's where the Viet Cong did it. You capture their weapons and then you use them against them the next time. That way they're supplying you. You grow stronger as they grow weaker.
I want to watch the whole movie. The instant gratification generation is, in my opinion, your biggest opportunity. Why is that? Well, we talked to, in particular, one bookstore, your bookstore, Valerie, I believe, and this is what we learned from the store about this.
On Saturday mornings, there's a birthday party somewhere in this neighborhood, and we get a lot of last-minute party buying. This is the child down the street. You want something wrapped, ready to go.
Quite often, Saturday mornings and into the early afternoon, we help parents find birthday gifts for children's birthdays, and we wrap those gifts for them. And a lot of people walk in, and we can't wrap it fast enough because they're on their way to the party. So a lot of people, yes, they want instant gratification. And strangely enough, we're faster than any online solution when it comes to Saturday morning on your way to the party. A lot of people want instant gratification, but then there are others who, I think part of walking in and smelling the smell and feeling comfortable with where they are, I'm guessing that that might slow them down a bit and understand that this is a curated process.
Valerie, tell me, what have you learned? Does it increase sales that you have these things going on so you can really wrap things very quickly?
Yeah, that's great. Saturday morning is our birthday party time.
It is. So you basically have reconfigured the whole Saturday morning around this, or what?
I don't know that we reconfigured it, but we figured out pretty quickly that's a busy time for us. So we make sure we have enough staff and we're ready to go, and the gift wrap station is prepared. And
what's your number one advice to everyone in here on this topic?
Be ready.
Be ready. Yeah. Well, it's good. No, good stuff. Do you know what? It's interesting because I think that the future bookstores, thanks a lot, needs to work with 2 scripts, not 1. I think you guys are doing it, you just don't know. And I think the best source of inspiration we can use comes from Britain. Can you believe it? Those Brits are coming in again. Alfred Hitchcock. He worked with 2 manuscripts, did you know that? He had the blue script, which is the rational script. It was where he talked about the props, the dialogue, the monologue, all that stuff. He was really good at it. But then he worked with a second script, which he called the green script. He basically, second by second, mapped down exactly how people should feel throughout the entire movie. Second by second, he should feel scared, he should feel empathy, he should feel love. So second by second, he will really create a second manuscript for his movies. And I think in many ways, that's the reason why his movies still today are so current as they are. And my advice to you in many ways is to have 2 scripts. Of course, you should have your blue script. If I translate that into the commercial world, you can see, however, how dull that is when you go into a supermarket. I mean, this is truly sexy, isn't it? And every one of those are spending billions of dollars telling emotions and stories, and they completely fail. Of course, you are a complete exception. You will never do things like this, I know that. But so what is the green script? Well, the green script, from my point of view, is really where you talk about theater of mind. That's where you tell those emotions. And you have emotions in buckets. But we just need to dial it up a little bit more somehow. So how do we do that? Well, from my point of view, we need to work on a next step of how we can create these emotions. And the best way, of course, is to work with these authors in an even stronger way. And I think the key word here is discovery. And I think you guys will agree. Let's take a look at what they say.
Discovery is the first step to having an experience, I think. I mean, that's what it feels like when people come into our store. They discover something, then they have an experience. It's like the stages of retailing, right? But then they have an experience, and then they want to replicate that experience, so they come back. Or they want to tell you about how the end of that experience was. They bought the book that they discovered here, or were hand-sold here, or saw on our staff pick wall here, and then they want to come back and tell us about it because they formed a relationship with it.
And it's partially about discovery of the store itself, and it's partially about, in our merchandising and our curation, we can help them to discover individual titles that they might not have known to look for. So if it's on a front display table, it means it's something that we're hoping to help people discover.
Lisa Poole, our owner, and I just went on a field trip, and one of the places we visited was Jeff Kinney's new store, An Unlikely Story, in Waltham, Massachusetts. It was a magical place because the children's department was, first of all, they had these golden wooden floors from historic wood, and then there are these flying books out of Harry Potter that are draped from the ceiling, and those lead into the magic brooms and the golden snitch, and then there are fairy lights around the wall, so that you know that any child, or really any adult, is going to just fall in love and be led right to that area.
We were talking about how do you create the story, and I feel like we're in bookstores are so lucky, and it's so different from many kinds of retail because our products are stories and ideas and conversations and explorations. Yeah, so it lends itself to having conversations. We see strangers come in and have conversations about ideas because that's just sort of in the air here. That's why they're here, and they know that they sort of have something in common with anyone who comes in the door.
Now, what can we learn from that? Well, the power of discovery is, from my point of view, very interesting, and particularly when it comes to an experiment I did in a clothing store and a shoe store. We learned that if we were hiding six pairs of fashionable shoes, rather than showing them out live, and the ladies would have to discover them. In fact, the sales went up 43%, and 30% bought them really, because we found them ourselves. It was a discovery process, because fundamentally in our reptile brain, we are hunters and gatherers, right? So the discovery process is incredibly important. But there's more to this. I think the most important thing to say with discovery is that it also means, on one hand, that people have to discover, but on the other hand, they should not be lost. And I'm going to tell you something now which is a bit shocking. The fewer books you're displaying, the more you sell. We did an experiment in Switzerland with Lindt chocolate. We gave people the option to choose from a tray of chocolates. There was 50 different pieces, beautiful Swiss chocolate. And we said to people, take as many pieces as you want. And they took 3 pieces. And they bought the box in average of 11% of the time. But when we gave them fewer options at the same price, so only 30 pieces, they actually took 4 pieces and they bought the box in 23% of the times. Because our brain is basically running on capacity maximum right now. And your role, in my opinion, is not just to be a curator of the books you have in the store. You need to be a curator for all books in the world, meaning you are the filter to all those books coming in. So when I come into your bookstore, that book, no matter what book I pick, is curated by you. You are the filter. Easier said than done, I know that. But there's another thing which I think could be very interesting, and that is the power of storytelling. And I think the best way to illustrate that is really to share with you my lucky rock. I have a lucky rock with me. It means a lot to me. I'm going to sell it now. Sandy, do you want to buy my lucky rock? Yeah, I have to earn money, you know.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
You don't want... Sandy! Multitasking. Do you want to buy my rock?
I don't want to buy it, but I'd love it to have it.
Oh. Sandy, I'm going to tell you a story. Maybe it changes your mind, right? In 1989, I was lying in bed. I remember that, and my friend called me on a landline, right? You know these things, landlines. And he said, Martin, you won't believe it. I'm almost close to the Berliner Wall, and right now, they're tearing down the Berliner Wall. It's amazing.
1989.
And I have one of the first pieces of rock uniting East and West Germany.
Were free to cross the Berlin Wall.
It wasn't long before the first...
Sandy, how much? How much?
Oh, $10,000.
We have a deal. That's live. Sandy, I'm doing something you should never do, and I apologize for that for everyone. I was lying. I'm sorry about it. You shouldn't do that, I know. But I'm going to tell you the truth now. A couple of years ago, I think it was 7 years ago, I did a presentation in Leeds in the United Kingdom. And it was a wonderful presentation, and one of the people presenting just before me, his name was Neil. And Neil said to me, listen, I want to give you a gift. So he gave me this as a gift. Now, I know, Sandy, you are fairly skeptical now with me, right? So I'm going to show you in a second a slideshow of Neil giving me this rock from the moon, plus a certificate that is authentic, right? But before I give you that certificate, I just want to ask you one simple question. How much?
100,000.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is not a story about a rock. This is a story about you. Because you're selling rocks. 10% of all rocks on planet Earth comes from space. They all have stories. Thanks, Lord. But there's more to this. Every single book you have in your store, every piece of merchandise you have a story. And what you have to do with every book is actually not just to give a little sort of review of the books, it's also to create an elevator pitch for each of the books. And to link that up with the audience you have coming in so it fits together. Some of you are doing that. But in the end of the day, this is your assets where the big players are failing. But there is another opportunity I find fascinating. I'm going to introduce you to a word which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is adjacencies. And we work a lot with that in supermarket chains around the world. Because adjacencies is really the key to increase sales in supermarkets. It is their secret weapon at the moment. And I want to go back to the store you've seen a couple of times before and just show you this video about adjacencies.
We call these our vignettes, and we match up the plush and the toy. A little add-on there to go with the gift purchase. I have a really great merchandiser who's really good at matching up the right book with the right plush. Our plush sales have really increased in the last 2 years since she's been with us.
We have a wonderful relationship with the restaurants next to us. It's very convenient for people to come in and get a cup of coffee and then shop with us before they meet with someone, and then in the evening, same thing. We have events many days of the week, but those days that we don't have events, we get a lot of shoppers who are just waiting for their table. At the very least, if they don't buy something, they know we're here, know what we have, and think of us when they need something.
So one of the earliest partnerships that we started was with the Brooklyn Academy of Music. We sell books and products related to each of the performances that are there. It's been a challenging business model, but it's opened up a ton of opportunities for us. People see our logo all the time as they pass through the theater, and we've recently started doing more partnered programming with them so we can host authors in their spaces that we would never be able to host. Our newest partnership is a pop-up in a toy store in a nearby neighborhood, Prospect Lefferts Garden. And through the neighborhood and getting to know the toy store owner, we chatted about the idea of opening up a second store in that neighborhood. They were looking to free up a little bit of their space. We all kind of came up with the idea of subletting a part of their store, the Middle Island, and it's a pop-up children's bookstore inside their store. Because we were getting approached so often about, can you sell at this book launch? Can you sell at this conference? Can you do sales? And, these different
became
kinds of
more
things.
than what we could manage on a case-by-case basis, and we realized that there was an opportunity to put all of that together and create a new position who would sort of run that side of our business for us.
We've actually just given that person an assistant because it's grown so much, that side of our sales.
Mobile selling has opened up a whole new avenue in that direction.
Well done to green light on that. I'm sure a lot of you guys do. Let's give them a hand there that deserve that, absolutely. I want to say one thing. There's a lot of booksellers in this country who are doing amazing stuff. And believe me, if I had the time, I'll run around to all of you because I just love the smell of bookstores. I'm kind of addicted. Are you like me? The first thing I do when I get a new book is to smell it. You do that? Or is it just me? Probably just me. But I want to add to this point because while observing consumers, I began to notice some unusual correlations, which actually brings me back to my promise about the toilet paper roll, if you remember. I know it sounds crazy. I know absolutely it sounds crazy, and I apologize for that. But as you go into so many homes, It's almost like after a while, you start to create an instinct. An instinct for me is an accumulation of information where you're connecting the dots. You just can't rationalize why. It's just happening. You start to be able to kind of look through walls because you've seen so many places. And what I realized after perhaps 600 or 700 consumer stays, that the position of the toilet paper roll actually tells you who's in control of the home and the money at home. So who do you think is in control of that home based on the fact that the toilet paper roll is hanging like that rather than that? Men or women? Men. Well, I can say that's right. 92% is men. And it's strange because you can't ask people these questions. Of course, they will argue about that to death. You can't ask people if they have self-esteem. You can't ask people things. But you can observe. I know exactly what you're doing now. You're going straight home to check that toilet paper, right? I knew it. But all that led me to thinking, what about all these big data? Let's just rewind back to our Google story for a second. Because what happened just a couple of months ago was that Google's numbers were analyzed by the Center for Disease Control here in the country. And they realized that Google was the numbers were 2 times what they should have been. Why? Because people were typing in flu, and then the neighbor would say, why do you type in flu? And then they started to type in flu. And suddenly the numbers went that way. And that's us as human beings. Because what Google were focused on was really the data, but we really don't have any information. And the reality is with those big data is that they care more about correlation rather than causation. Where small data is all about caring on the causation rather than the correlation. That is the hypothesis. And you guys are sitting in front of the hypothesis every day. I want to ask you a tricky question. How many of you have been in a random consumer's home, one of your customers, you don't know the person, or a potential customer's home, walking around the home and look at the bookshelf and talk to them about their relationship with books and reading and buying and sitting with them online and see how they buy their stuff online? How many of you have done that? Raise your hand. Now, there can be 2 reasons why you're not raising your hand. One can be that my accent is so thick that you simply haven't gotten anything of what I'm saying. Or it actually could be kind of a hint because it costs nothing. This is actually the advice I give to the big players of the world, the Nestles and the Legos of the world, to sleep with the consumer. I tend to talk about it. Move in with the consumer for a day or spend time with them to learn about their lives. Because in the future, big data is going to have a little brother, which is small data. It's the yin and the yang. It's the causation followed by the correlation, and not opposite as it is now, treating us as robots. I define small data as seemingly insignificant behavioral observation that points towards one or more unmet consumer needs. Small data, in my opinion, is the foundation for breakthrough ideas or transformative ways of turning around brands. And I think everyone can do it because really it is to open up your minds and listen. Small data happens both offline and online, by the way. I think this is fascinating. According to the Journal of Behavioral Information Technology in 2014, with 70% accuracy, software is today able to assess how a person is feeling based on the way the person types. Just the space, the pause you do on Google can be monitored and tell about your mood. And take a look at this. This is funny. They also learned that your typos, how frequently you use caps, and your choice of certain words can, with 79% accuracy, determine your credit card rating. Well, that's a bit scary, that one, right? And then, how many is using emojis? How many is using emojis? Well, I want you to look around and just remember those people, because here's some stats on that one, right? For example, that 54% of emoji users had sex in 2014, and I really feel sorry for the rest of you guys. Of course, there's serious and non-serious small data. I want to just tell you a quick story. The number 1 used emoji in UK is the wink, which fits incredibly well to their culture, that witty type of strange humor they have. The number 1 emoji they use in Saudi Arabia is a potted plant and a flower. The number one emoji used in Russia, and you know if you've been there, they don't smile a lot, I have to say, is a heart. So it's almost an encapsulation of the entire society into one little symbol. And what I do is to pick that up. I sleep with the consumer. And I just want to point out one thing. I am looking at the screen here. Okay. This is actually a photo we took, Oliver and I, we took in Russia, in Siberia, where we flew around for, I don't know, a long time. Do you know how big Siberia is? It's amazing. We flew, I think, 1 hour every day, and after 7 days, there was 7-hour time difference, and we were half an hour away from Tokyo. I mean, this is serious stuff. And what we do is to pick up these clues. I'm talking a lot about that in the book. But people are saying to me, how can you interview 20 or 30 people and base that on an entire strategy for a company like Lego or whatever company? I went to the doctor the other day to have a health check in Switzerland. And he didn't say to me, why don't we take 6 gallons of blood from you, just to be sure? He took a couple of drops. And because science is able to interpret those data, we can come to a conclusion. And yes, I'm still alive, which is good news, I think. So we went around the world. We do that all the time. And a fashion chain contacted us some time ago, and they said, we have a problem. Our chain is just not succeeding. We talk to the consumer. They love our product. But when we look at ourselves, it's just not moving anywhere. So we went into homes across Europe. These are true photos. And actually what you see here, if you have a really sharp eye, you're right now looking at a retail revolution for fashion. There's a retail revolution up there. You want to see it? The retail revolution happened when we started to move in with these girls. With permission, of course, from the parents. We wanted to find out what's happening. And what we learned, and this is fascinating, we learned that these girls are waking up 11 minutes early every morning, and they went to school around 12 minutes later. So they are 23 minutes awake more than they were just 10 years ago. It was very strange. What are they using all this time for? We asked ourselves. So the first thing I did was to go to the bathroom. And in the bathroom, we realized that the shampoo and the hole in the shampoo was smaller than it normally would be, just compared to 10 years ago. So obviously, they're not spending the time in the shower because there's a direct correlation between the hole in the shampoo and how many minutes you spend in the shower. Okay, so what should we do then? So we went into the drawers and we realized the hand cream had changed from water-based hand cream 10 years ago to oil-based hand cream. This makes your fingers more sort of moisturized all the time. And the facial cream, by the way, had changed from oil-based facial cream to water-based facial cream, which actually makes your face shine less, I've been told. And by the way, the facial powder sales had increased quite a lot. Do you know what it means? We thought. Of course, these girls are spending the time taking selfies of themselves. I mean, seriously, they wake up in the morning, and the first thing they do is to take the phone. Their fingers are not wet, so they can't use the display, so they use this oil. They then can still wipe away. They don't want to shine, so they put the powder on top, and they take a selfie. So we went back to the big data after this hypothesis, looked at all these phone bills, again with permission from mom and dad, and realized they don't take one selfie every morning. They take 17 selfies of themselves every morning to color coordinate the clothes before they go to school. The parents didn't even know it. Now this is an interesting insight if you're a fashion chain, because if you sort of have color coordinated your clothes for 2 weeks, you're kind of running out of options. So we introduced 2 more seasons. And then I went into the dressing rooms to look at them. And I realized, exactly as we learned from the book industry, that girls, when they're shopping, are not shopping alone. They're shopping groups. 4 or 5 girls at the same time. It was impossible to squeeze yourself into that little room, so we changed the size. And then we did something which is kind of strange. This is a true photo from the store, and this is one big TV screen. And this is the start button. You press it. And then you have Facebook coming up. You then, again with permission, can drag in your closest friends on the wall. You press go ahead, it takes a photo of you, and they will now vote on the clothes you're wearing in that dressing room. 70% like that handbag, they really don't like those shoes. And they shoot a selfie of themselves. And the sales went up. And it all began with the facial cream. When we build brands, it's all about trying to identify those small data wherever they are. And I think the most important word we all are lacking right now is the word transformation. This is the number one word in my mind. When did you last go through a transformation? Let me just ask you another question, because this may put you into the right mood. Do you reset or reboot your computer every night these days? Or do you do that less today than you did 10 years ago? You probably do it less, right? Yeah. Why do we do it less? Because we don't reboot our brain anymore. Think about it. We don't go through transitions. When we wake up in the morning, what is the first thing we do? Well, we take that phone. Yes, I get that. And then what happens is that we are on the phone when we have breakfast. And as we are driving to school or to work, we are on the phone, and all this stuff is completely disappearing. There is no transition in our life anymore. What transition, like a computer, is a way to reboot and restart the computer. If you don't do that, it will be slow the day after. If you don't defragmentize your computer or compartmentalize your memory by going through transitions, we become less clear in our mind and we become depressed. So why am I saying this? Because you guys have an opportunity here. Let's just pause for a second. I'm not sure if you have noticed it. I love to watch people in elevators. And when I go into the elevator, the first thing I do is to look at how many people are doing this one here, the size. 1/3. Why do you do that? Because your phone doesn't work in there. Because you're transitioning between two different stages of your mind. You feel it, right? Well, that leads me back to my picture about the snow. Because yesterday New York City did this. They did this one here. I talked to people over the phone. They said to me, I was in panic the first hour. I couldn't drive anywhere. And then I realized I just better let go and spend time. And suddenly people woke up. They're spending time with the kids. They're laughing. It just didn't work, that busy life. And we did this one here. And do you know what you own? You own that. That is your opportunity. When we work with brands, we try to put a word on things, to simplify, to be really clear and concise, because there's so much stuff out there. So I just want to do a little game here. I just want to hear, what brand would you say that is? Raise your hand. You don't know what brand that is. Well, if I say one word describing that brand, what brand would you say? Any guesses here? Google. Who will say Google? Raise your hand. Well, you're right about that. Okay, we'll try one more game. So that was difficult, right? We'll try one here. If I say a car, which is standing for, let's say, safety, I'll count down 3, 2, 1, and you say who it is. 3, 2, 1. That is strong branding, right? I need to try you, just for fun. I know it's not fair to say it, but we'll try it with you guys. Your one word in your bookstore. You ready? 3, 2, 1, and you say it. 3, 2, 1. You get my opinion here, right? Do you know what your one word is? Very simple. Your one word is transition. That's your one word. Why is it your one word? Because you help people to transition from the busy lives, from the lives they don't have anymore, from the things they lost, from the good old memories, the rosy memories, as Charles Dickens once wrote. That is what you're selling. You're selling that. And if you try to compete with, those .com people on their terms, you'll fail. Because that's not your strength. Amazon has learned it. Their sales are staggering now. It's not going up that much on books. They built up a physical store, as you know, in Seattle. Very interesting stuff. But But what's really interesting is why did they do it? And I have an assumption around it. Travelocity, which is a search engine for city and country and travels and all that stuff, did an experiment some time ago. What they did was a very interesting experiment. They asked people to surf the nets. And they knew they were part of the experiment, but they didn't know how. And they were asked to buy a trip to somewhere in the world. And they had a certain budget. And people would search and search and search and search and search. Then suddenly, in the middle of everything, no one knew why this would happen. Someone would knock on the main door. The person had to stand up from the computer and go out and open the door. And there was this researcher standing and say, can we talk for 5 minutes? I'm from Macy Nielsen. And they talked for 5 minutes and the person went back again to work. What the person didn't know was that was the experiment. When you compare this with the control group bought on average, I think it was $700 worth of trips. But when they were disrupted, it went up 20%. Why? Well, think about it yourself. When you wake up in the morning, again, you're checking those emails. Have you tried that I just want to check 2 emails, just 2. And after half an hour, you're still sitting in underwear, right? Checking all this stuff, right? Forgot about time. But that's what's happening if you surf online. So it becomes wallpaper and you don't make decisions. So disruption is the key. Disruption is transition. And that's probably the reason why Amazon is doing it. Because people just go on with the wallpaper life. But it also teaches another thing, which I find fascinating, which is what I call embodied cognition, or enclothed cognition. A study done some time ago in New York City showed that when people had the option to choose from 3 different formats of lab coats with a little sign above, they had one lab coat where it said doctor, one it said dentist, and one just white. When people were monitored before, in terms of intelligence level, self-confidence, all that stuff, and then when they went through it, something dramatically changed. Doctor, lab coat, wearing it for a couple of minutes, they become more self-confident, faster at answering questions, and even the accuracy of those answers was stronger. Just because of what they're wearing. In the past, I think it's fair to say that your bookstores were intimidating. It was only those sophisticated, highly educated people from Oxford which had access to those stores, and the rest of us would feel like complete losers. A little bit like when you, in the past, would go into these vinyl stores and buy one of these old, these flat things with music built into it, right? These round ones, yeah. But if you make this accessible and you give people the feeling of empowerment, you make them feel, I actually have a sense and role in my society. You make them become the star. You actually create embodied cognition. You are the zone of transformation. So you need to work on transformation from the moment I walk inside the store. It has to be, whoa, this is a different universe I'm going into. I did that with a supermarket chain in North Carolina. This is how the stores looked like before. Slightly suicidal, I would say. So we tried, how do we work with these stores and turn it around? And here's a piece of, I think, fairly frightening information. We learned from doing these small data research that communities are dead. Or not the ones in the cloud. They are thriving, believe me. But as we believe that all these communities are the holy grave of every answer to everything, the physical ones dies. There's an experiment conducted with rats. The experiment was very simple. Rats were to be pet for about a month, I think it was. And if you were petting the rats, they lived much longer than if you were not petting them. I'm not saying we're rats, but I am saying the tactile sensation, the physical interaction, the reason why we are sitting here face to face rather than you watching a stupid videotape or a stream is because we like the interaction, and that will come back. That's the reason why the numbers of people going to cinemas are going up. That's the reason why people going to concerts are going up. People are going to fresh farmers markets, went up 17% last year, because we want a physical interaction, and that is your asset. Here's what we learned from visiting some of your stores.
I think the independent bookstore plays a huge role in the community. In fact, we just changed our tagline to be Raleigh's Community Bookstore. We hear over and over again that people shop here because of the the events, the town halls, the meetings, the story times that we have here because they see it as a gathering place and offering to the community. And because this is such a digital time, I think people are more appreciative of having a place where they can physically connect to other people.
The business plan for the store started as part of an annual competition run by the Brooklyn Business Library called Power Up. And the business plan ended up actually winning the grand prize that year, which was great. It was like a little bit of seed money, but it was also some really great publicity. That brought us to the attention of the Fort Greene Association. And they had actively been looking to open a bookstore in this neighborhood because they had done this survey. So they created a survey saying, what kinds of businesses do you want to see in this neighborhood? And the number one response was, we need a bookstore in this neighborhood. When you walk through a small town, there's the places that are the anchors of a community. A bookstore thrives in a place that is an active and involved neighborhood, and which this is, but this neighborhood was missing the bookstore part of their fabric. We were talking about this a little bit before, the idea of the third place, the place that's, it's not home, it's not work, it's where you go to meet your neighbors, to spend your leisure time. For some people it's the bar or the barber shop or the coffee shop, but a bookstore can be one of those places.
Well done, absolutely. So this is back to Lowe's Food in North Carolina. This is our premise because all the big players, Publix and Harris Teeter's and Wegmans and all these people coming to town, most of them, if not all of them, corporations which are on the share market. And then we had the almost only local store chain in North Carolina. And it was interesting because as we transformed those stores to slightly different looking stores, where there was a complete transformation into the store, something extraordinary happened. And in fact, I think I would like to share with you a little video where I'll just take you through some of the things. It's crazy, I want to warn you. But as you walk into the stores, you will notice that people actually are crazy in the store. We actually hired former Disney executives to train us in character building inside the store, so every person is acting as a character. There's a sausage professor. There's even the chicken area where we are having the chicken dance. Can you believe it? Every time there is new chickens coming out, which is quite often in that store, there is a chicken dance. And I don't need to tell you that chicken sales went up around 1,000% because of that. Pick and prep, where you're preparing all the fruit and vegetables on the fly as you want it, so everything is fresh. You don't need to cut all those different things. And then I love this one here, the cakery, where you have the children dance. You actually have children doing cakewalks on the floor, and they have competitions. We all only have square cakes, by the way, and I'm talking in the book about why they're square and not round, because there's a very interesting story about that. Sausage work, 26 different flavors of sausages every day. We even have a sausage which is glowing in the dark for Halloween. Okay, so here we go. Now you think, oh gee, this is really, crazy. And it is, I agree, it is kind of crazy. But my story is very simple. The reason why this works is because you're no longer in the supermarket. You are transforming into another universe. This is actually the community table. And the community will bring in every day the local farmers and produce brands with the local farmers. So it's not our brands, it's the local farmer. Suddenly, they have a community center. And do you know what? You are a community center too, in many ways. You should own that conversation. You should look at that and see yourself in that light. Because that's what we learned with Lowe's. This is the board of activities every day in a supermarket. I mean, you own transition. You are a community center, in my opinion. Did it work for Lowe's? Yeah, absolutely it did. This is the average increase of sales per store over the last years. I mean, normally for a supermarket, we talk about 3%. So it works, as crazy as it is. So what have we learned from this whole experience? I mean, why don't you begin searching for those small data? Moving with the consumer, or at least visit them. Spend time and see the world from their point of view. Don't stay in your store. Understand why they went to your store and why they didn't go to your store. Why they went online and not physical. And you can only do that by getting your hands dirty and live with them. And then take all of these clues, all those emotional DNA and all that stuff, and combine that to the bigger picture. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. But you guys are miles ahead of everyone else right now. in many ways, I just don't think you know it, but you actually are. I have a gift for you, by the way. This is a password for today. If you want to have all the videos, the entire presentation, everything free of charge, this is your password, Incredible in lowercase. So write it down, Incredible, Incredible, Incredible. And what you do is you go into martinlindstrom.com, and in the top right there is a download icon. And then you can download the entire presentation, all the videos, by the way. And if you like this stuff, share it with everyone and claim it's yours. I'm perfectly fine with that. The most important thing, honestly, is that when you come home, that the voice you represent today is those fantastic initiatives from across the country, so you can get that ball rolling of transformation. I want to warn you, by the way, that if you go into martinlindstrom.com and download things, I will ask you for your email address, and I will spam you forever. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm just thinking about what next steps should be, and I have an idea, because I think I promised you guys to sort of give you something in return. I think we said that over the last couple of weeks. But before I do that, I just want to summarize the 7 points I believe we are learning from this. First of all these stories you've heard about, and a lot of other stories, which I'm, by the way, talking about in my book, really started out from this. Everything from how do we find out local communities? It actually started with a green frog in a home. Can you believe it? How Nestle was turned around. All these things starts with one single thing, which is those small data, which really is so much straight in front of us. But let's just pause for a second. Here's 7 pieces of advice I'll give you. You're the master of transition, own it. Make sure that people feel they're going into another universe. Use smell, sound, touch, taste, and sight. You are the community. There is no other community. Churches are closing down, unfortunately. Community centers can't afford to live anymore. Libraries are certainly closing down. So you are the community center. Turn your weaknesses into your strength. We talked about that. And number 4, your power tool is adjacencies. Do exactly what we saw. Tell stories across everything and do it systematically. Your store is all about green script. So develop that. Talk about how you should feel when you're walking and bring it down to a piece of paper and make sure every staff member being employed with you live that mantra. Your point of differentiation are the senses. So use the senses. Don't diminish them. Make sure they're powerful. And last but not least, use the small data to understand your future opportunities by living with consumers and talking with them. Now that leads me to the winners, because I think we promised a couple of winners today. So I'm going to announce 2 out of 3 winners right now. I think we promised one group a Skype consultation with me and my team, where we will go through the bookstore and give you advice over Skype. And that's based on the competition we had in the lead up to the event today. And I'm going to do it in the best manner, as you do, building a show. Are you ready? The winner. Let's see who that is. That is City Starter Books, Kevin Gillis. Where are you? Let's give him a hand. Oh, there you are. Fantastic. Congratulations for that. Oliver, which is down there, will be in contact with you and we'll make it happen. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. There is a grand winner, which is where we go into the store and actually physically are around. And we won't do what I did with today's show, which is to transform everything and build the whole thing with television cameras, but I will make sure we are in your stores and help you to twist things around to make it work. And there's a very special reason why we choose this store, because we feel there's a stronger potential and because we just love your store. Because the store we're talking about is around 100 years old, at least the building is. And there we are. Let's give him a hand. Page 158. Woo! Congratulations. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. You give me the goosebumps. You know the power of goosebumps. Power of goosebumps is an unbiased reaction to emotions. It's the most powerful thing we have. Thank you for that. Now, I think it's time to wrap up. And I think the best way to wrap up is to say that we will have a winner, by the way, with this tag thing going on, the Twitter activity. The winner will be announced in the middle of the workshop we have going on right now, actually. And by the way, there is a gift as well, I want to warn you. There is a book out there, which I think you can guess what the title is of the book. Don't know. Here's the problem. There's only 350 books donated from St. Martin's, and thank you to St. Martin's for that. Only problem is that 350 books, and there is 700 people in this room. So we can do two things, right? One is run. The second thing can be that and there was a very smart lady coming up to me and saying, well, I actually will advise that every bookstore take 1.5 book per person, right? So you're welcome to take 1.5 book per store if you want to do that. I don't know how you do that, but good luck. Or maybe you just hate my book and you don't want it anyway, right? I don't know. So the tag winner will be announced a little bit later on today. Now, this is my story. And my story is very simple. I want to go back to a quote from Benjamin Franklin. I think it's him quoting it because we really don't know who did the quote. But he certainly said, "Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I might remember. Involve me and I'll understand." And I think this is what you guys is all about. This is certainly what I believe Small Data is all about. That is to systematically involve everyone so they understand why you are the best bookstore in the world and you so deserve it. Thanks everyone.